Nice launch check, countdown net. Pad is clear.
10, 9, 8.
Launch auto sequence
7,
has started.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Go for launch.
Vehicle is supersonic. Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed. Stage 1 is transonic. Landing legs have deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
All systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with the Intelsat 40e and NASA
30 seconds.
and the NASA Smithsonian Tempo payload. Let's listen in to the terminal count.
$15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition, engines full power, and liftoff. Intelsat 40e. Go Intelsat, go Falcon.
Vehicle is reaching downrange.
If you're just joining us, those gorgeous views on your screen mean that Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. During
Nominal power and telemetry.
They call out there that nominal power and telemetry for the vehicle. During this phase, which is called ascent, we tilt the engines. The technical term for this is called gimbaling, and that turns the rocket horizontally in what we call a gravity turn.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
There's a call out that Falcon 9 is now traveling faster than the speed of sound. During this period, we're still going up, but we're also heading horizontally away from the launch pad.
Max Q.
Just moments ago, we throttled down in preparation for max Q, which is the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle will see on ascent. So that's what's happening right now. The rocket typically needs to go about 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled back to Earth and reach orbit. Now we're going to have 3 events coming up in quick succession, starting with main engine cutoff, stage separation, and second engine start 1. Main engine cutoff, or MECO, is the point during the flight where we shut down the 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. Shortly after that, stages 1 and 2 will separate from each other so that the second stage isn't carrying unnecessary mass to orbit. And of course, the first stage booster begins its trip back to Earth. The last call out you heard was about the MVAC engine. That's what we're going to start up during SES-1, or second engine start 1. That's the period during the flight where we'll ignite the Merlin vacuum engine on board the second stage for the first time. So we'll see all 3 of those happen back to back just about 10 seconds from now.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
So there you heard and definitely saw those great views on your screen. 3 events happening back to back: main engine cutoff, stage separation, and SES-1. Coming up next will be fairing separation in just a couple of seconds. During this portion of the flight, we'll jettison both fairing halves and then attempt to retrieve them again today.
Fairing separation confirmed.
There we've got confirmation of fairing separation, which means both fairing halves are on their way back to Earth to be recovered by our recovery vessel, Doug. Coming up next, there are 2 burns for our first stage as we prepare for landing on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
We're now T+3 minutes and 54 seconds into today's mission. And we're currently, as you see there on your screen, we're in the first of 2 planned MVAC burns that will occur prior to satellite deployment. At T plus 6 minutes and 31 seconds, or around there, you should see on your screen the first stage's entry burn. For that entry burn, we relight 3 M1D engines, which are those 9 engines at the base or the bottom of the first stage. We will relight first the center engine, or called E9, and then shortly thereafter, we will also relight 2 radial engines, engines 1 and 5. And all 3 of those together will help slow the vehicle down as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. We perform that reentry burn in order to slow down the booster, which helps to reduce those reentry forces that it sees, and in turn, that helps us recover and reuse our first stages.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Although we can't see the first stage right now, you can follow along with the telemetry there in the bottom left-hand corner for stage 1, and then that stage 2 telemetry there in the right-hand bottom corner of your screen. Now, during that entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but it's still moving very rapidly. This causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, also known as the rocket's plume, and by doing so, we get a deposit of soot on the vehicle surface. That soot then basically comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses.
Stage 1, entry burn, startup.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
All right, so there on that left-hand side of your screen, those stage 1 views are back. We can see that entry burn has begun, and it's also illuminating the grid fins, which help to steer the booster for re-entry and also to make a precise landing.
Stage 1, entry burn, shut down.
All right, we can see that entry burn has concluded.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
As a reminder, the first stage that we saw there on the left-hand side of your screen, that performed the entry burn for the 4th time. It previously supported CRS-26, OneWeb Launch 16, and a Starlink mission. Falcon 9 is the world's first orbital-class reusable rocket, and this is important because reusability allows SpaceX to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down the cost of space access.
Terminal guidance.
Stage 1, transonic.
That call-out tells us that the first stage is traveling near the speed of sound. That first stage will begin its landing burn just after we have the second engine cut off.
MVAC shutdown.
All right, there's that call-out telling us that we had successful shutdown or cut
Stage 1, landing burn.
You can see landing burn has begun there on that screen.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
You can see those grid fins working hard to steer it back to the drone ship for its landing.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Great call out there indicating we've got...
Stage 1, landing leg deployed. Stage 1, landing confirmed.
There you can see on your screen an amazing view as always. That landing marks SpaceX's 184th recovery of an orbital-class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. The mission isn't over just yet. We did hear the call-out telling us that the second stage achieved good orbit, so it is now embarking on its first coast phase. After this coast phase, we will light that MVAC engine for a second time, and that will happen around the T plus 26 minute mark. So hang tight, we'll see you back here in about 15 minutes.
Copy, loss of signal Bermuda.
Welcome back to the SpaceX webcast. Tonight's Falcon 9 mission is carrying the Intelsat 40e and NASA Smithsonian Tempo payload for our customer, Intelsat. We've had a nominal mission so far. Falcon 9 launched on time at 12:30 a.m. Eastern from Space Launch Complex 40, and then successfully landed on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. While the second stage completed its first burn, taking our payload into its initial parking orbit. We're just about 5 seconds away from a second ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine, which will carry the second stage and today's payload into the orbit needed to deploy the satellite.
Back ignition.
There's the confirmation we've got for SES-2, second engine start 2. This burn of the MVAC engine is planned to last just about a minute. Right now you can see the MVAC skirt glowing orange as it burns. Excuse me, as the engine burns. While the MVAC and Merlin engines on board the first stage are quite similar, the MVAC is unique in that it's been optimized to perform in the vacuum of space, which gives it its name, Merlin vacuum.
MVAC shutdown.
There's the confirmation of MVAC shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
That callout confirms that we're in the correct orbit. So right now, the payload is still attached to Falcon 9's second stage, with deployment scheduled in just about 4 minutes. While we wait, sit back and enjoy the views.
If you're just joining us, welcome to the webcast for the IS-40e and Tempo mission. We've had a nominal mission so far with an on-time liftoff at 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by successful ascent, stage separation, and 2 second stage engine burns. We're now coming up on the final mission milestone of the day, and that's payload deployment, of course. That payload, as you see there on your screen, will be deploying from our second stage. As a reminder, our customer for today's mission is Intelsat, and their IS-40e payload is a geosynchronous communication satellite that also features a NASA payload, TEMPO, or Tropospheric Emissions Monitoring Pollution. The payload will be operated by Intelsat, but TEMPO is a partnership between NASA and the Smithsonian Institution's Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory.
Payload separation confirmed.
A beautiful view there, as you can see, and as we heard called out, successful confirmation of the Intelsat 40e and NASA Smithsonian TEMPO payload.
All of us here at SpaceX want to give a big thank you to our customer,
Signal Cabone.
Intelsat, for entrusting us
primary.
with today's mission. We also want to give a shout out to the Range and Federal Aviation Administration for supporting today's launch. Tonight's flight concludes SpaceX's 222nd overall mission to date and our 23rd launch of 2023. Thanks to all our viewers for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the rest of your morning, and we'll see you again soon.